Imagine waking up in medieval London, before clean water, before modern medicine, before street lights, and before anyone had figured out that throwing waste into the street was a terrible idea. The air is thick with smoke, the river smells deadly, the food might betray you, and one wrong step in the mud could ruin your entire day. Tonight we'll walk slowly through a city full of bells markets, alehouses, sickness, danger, and strange little medieval habits that people trusted to survive. So before we step through the city gate, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy relaxing history stories like this. Now settle in, get comfortable, and let's enter medieval London together. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing in the river mist outside medieval London with cold stone somewhere ahead of you, damp straw clinging to the hem of your cloak, smoke caught in the rafters of distant houses and bells floating thinly through the dark like they have lost their way. Mud grips your boots, torchlight trembles beyond the walls. A horse breathes cloudy warmth into the winter air beside a cart stacked with sacks of wool, and the Thames smells of wet wood, old fish, and secrets best left downstream. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You feel the chill settle into your fingers, and you understand very gently that you probably would not last a week out here, not without luck, thick shoes, and a stomach willing to forgive many things. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what your local time is. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand where the road dips toward the city, where the ruts are dark with old rain, and cartwheels have chewed the earth into troughs. Evening has not quite fallen, but daylight is already tired. It lies pale over the fields behind you, and touches the city wall ahead with a grey, reluctant glow. London rises there like a thought too crowded to hold still. Timber roofs packed behind stone defences, chimneys breathing smoke, church towers pricking the winter sky, and the wide river turning beneath it all with slow brown patience. You have come by the Western Road, though no one can quite agree whether this is the best way to approach the city or merely the least miserable one. Some swear that entering before dusk keeps thieves away, while others say dusk is safer because the saints are still awake, and the devils have not yet properly begun their rounds. A carter beside you mutters that the only true protection is an empty purse, which feels both wise and personally insulting. Your cloak is fur-lined only in the hopeful sense that there may once have been fur somewhere near it. You carry a small bundle wrapped in cloth, a heel of coarse bread, a wooden spoon, woolen footcloths, and an iron charm pressed into your palm by an old woman at a roadside shrine. She told you it was blessed against fever, bad water, sudden knives, and quarrelsome geese. Even now it is hard to tell whether she believed all of that or whether she simply liked the look of your coin. Around you, travellers gather in the fading light. A monk rides a small mule whose ears appear more devout than its master. A woman with red hands and a basket of eggs keeps glancing back along the road. Two pilgrims wear little pewter badges sewn to their hats, one shaped like a saint's head, one like a shell from a far-off shrine. The badges catch the last light winking faintly, and you wonder how much holiness can fit in such a small piece of metal. The road smells of wet leather, dung smoke, and river cold. Somewhere behind the carts, a narrow brown dog with one torn ear coughs, shakes itself, and trots closer. It sniffs your boot, decides nothing about you is edible yet, and remains nearby anyway. You do not invite it. The dog understands this and ignores you with impressive dignity. Beyond the travellers, the gate waits beneath heavy timber and stone. Torches burn in iron brackets. You see men moving above the wall, cloaks, drawn tight spears resting against the parapet like bare winter branches. A city gate is a mouth, and London is very hungry. You pause beside a low roadside cross where offerings have been tucked into cracks in the stone, a bent pin, a scrap of cloth, a wilted sprig of rosemary, and a tiny wax figure with one arm missing. Someone has pressed mud over the base to hold a candle upright, though the candle has burned almost to nothing. Some swear that a candle at a wayside cross can turn aside sickness for one night. Others say it only helps you see the puddle before you step in it. Both seem useful. A bell sounds from within London, then another not exactly together. The first is deep and solemn, the second thinner, impatient perhaps, from a smaller church wedged among houses where the priest must ring with one hand and argue with parishioners with the other. The sound rolls through the mist. Men lift their heads. The egg woman crosses herself. The monk on the mule does not, perhaps because he is asleep with his eyes open. You move closer with the others and the mud receives you lovingly, which is to say it tries to keep part of your boot forever. A cart ahead lurches its wheels thick with clay, and the oxen lean into their yoke with patient sorrow. On the cart lie barrels bound for the city, and from one comes the sour sweet smell of ale. This is ordinary drink here, safer than much water, though safe is a word that works very hard in medieval London. Near the gate a toll collector sits beneath a hooded lantern with a board on his knees. His fingers are red from cold, yet he handles coins with the tenderness of a priest touching relics. Beside him, a guard asks questions in a voice worn smooth by repetition. One man claims he's bringing fine cloth to a reputable merchant, though the bundle on his back looks suspiciously like old bedding. A girl leading 2 geese says she is visiting her aunt. The geese add their own legal argument. You stand in line and feel the city breathe. It breathes through chimneys, drains, tavern doors, churchyards, and the wide, dark throat of the gate. It breathes sickness too, though you cannot see it, only sense how close everyone stands, how many hands touch the same rail, how many boots stir the same filth. London promises work, bread trade, new shelter, and spectacle. It also promises fever, hunger, foul water, falling tiles, bad meat, worse luck, and strangers who smile too quickly. Still you step forward. The dog follows. The monk's mule sighs. The egg woman adjusts her basket. Somewhere inside the city a door slams and someone laughs, and a bell gives one more slow note that seems to hang in the mist just for you. You pull your damp cloak closer, rub your cold thumb over the little iron charm and lift your eyes to the dark arch of the gate. London waits ahead, crowded and smoky and alive, and though every sensible part of you suggests turning back toward the quieter road, your feet continue toward the torchlight, one careful step at a time. You join the slow press of bodies before Ludgate, though the gate itself seems less like a doorway than a stone decision made by men who distrusted the world. Its arch rises black against the bruised light damp blocks shining where rain has worked into the mortar. Above you a guard leans from the woolwalk cap pulled low breath pale in the cold. He watches the road with the weary attention of a man who has heard every excuse for unpaid tolls and several that probably required prayer. The line shuffles, wheels creak, hooves suck at the mud. A merchant ahead carries dyed cloth wrapped in oilskin, and every few steps he touches it, as if checking that London has not already stolen it by smell alone. His cloak is trimmed with squirrel fur, his gloves are better than yours, and his face has the tight expression of someone who expects to be cheated but prefers it indoors. Beside him, 2 pilgrims murmur together, their badges glimmering faintly, their staffs dark with road dirt. One has a lead token from a shrine tied to his wrist with red thread, for some swear that red thread confuses the wandering eye of sickness. No one can quite agree whether the sickness is truly confused or merely polite enough to wait. The toll collector looks up as each traveller reaches him. His board is marked with scratches, his purse hangs beneath his cloak, and a beeswax candle gutters in a horn lantern beside his knee. It gives off a honeyed smell almost clean, and for a moment you lean toward it like a moth with poor judgment. He asks names, trades, goods, purpose, parish, master, destination, and sometimes asks again in a different order, as though truth might fall out if shaken properly. When your turn comes, you step forward and feel the dog brush your calf. The toll collector glances down at it. Yours? You look at the dog. The dog looks at the gate. It appears to be conducting business of its own. Not exactly, you say. The collector makes a mark anyway, which seems unfair, but also very London. He asks what you carry, and you show your bundle wooden spoon, coarse bread, woolen footcloths, and the iron charm hidden in your palm. His eyes pause on the charm. He does not laugh. Some swear iron keeps away fever-fair folk night terrors and dishonest bakers. In a city like this, even a toll man may prefer not to offend iron. The guard beside him lifts your cloak hem with the blunt end of his staff to see whether anything hangs beneath it. You feel the cold air bite your knees. Around you carts shift and men grumble. A barrel leaks ale onto the ground in slow dark drops, and the mud receives it like a blessed offering. The carter notices and makes a sound halfway between grief and arithmetic. A woman behind you, the one with the eggs, whispers a prayer to St. Sitha, for lost things, though nothing is lost yet except warmth and patience. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on which saint is best for travel through a city gate. Some name Christopher for roads, some Julian for lodging some a local saint whose bones may or may not be in 3 different churches at once. London is generous with relics in the way a market is generous with claims. At last the toll collector waves you onward. You duck under the arch and the world changes. The sound comes first. Outside the wall, noise has spread into mist and fields. Beneath Ludgate it gathers close around you. Wheels strike stone, hooves clatter, chains knock against wood. Voices echo upward until every complaint becomes part of a larger complaint, ancient and official. The air smells of wet wool iron, horse sweat, old straw and torch pitch. The walls are close enough that you feel the breath of strangers pass along your cheek. You keep one hand on your bundle and the other near the charm. This is not because you're cowardly. It is because you have eyes. A narrow boy in a patched cap slips between a cart and a mule with the grace of smoke, and the merchant with the squirrel fur gloves suddenly pats his purse. Nothing is missing perhaps, or perhaps he's not found the missing place yet. The boy is gone before anyone can decide. Halfway under the gate the crowd halts. A cart is wedged at an angle, one wheel pressed against the stone curb, its driver swearing softly enough to pretend it is not swearing. On top sits a coop of chickens offended by architecture. Their feathers ruffle in the torchlight white and russet and dusty gold. A pilgrim steadies the coop, and the chickens respond as though martyrdom has come early. You stand waiting in the narrow crush. A drop of cold water falls from the arch onto the back of your neck. Then another. The dog sits on your foot. "You're not mine," you whisper. The dog yawns, revealing a pink tongue and the dental future of medieval London. Ahead, the monk on the mule turns in his saddle and gives you a look. He has a pale, narrow face and ink on 2 fingers. His pouch is tied with more knots than seems necessary. He notices you noticing and shifts his cloak over it. Even now it is hard to tell whether he is suspicious because he has something to hide, or because London teaches even holy men to sit sideways from the truth. The cart is freed at last by 3 men pushing, one boy pulling, and an old woman telling everyone exactly how it should have been done from the beginning. The wheel jolts loose. The chickens settle into lesser outrage. The crowd breathes forward again. You pass beneath the last black rib of the gate, and the torchlight behind you flickers across wet stone. For one heartbeat you are neither outside nor inside, neither road traveller nor city creature. You are held in the throat of London where taxes are counted, rumours enter, strangers are weighed, and every footstep becomes part of the city's long muddy memory. Then you emerge just within the wall. Timber houses lean above the lane as if listening. A signboard creaks somewhere ahead, but the press of carts and shoulders keeps you near the gate mouth. You do not yet move deeply into the streets. You simply stand there, letting the city close behind you. The toll collector's candle glows small and honey-coloured through the arch at your back. The evening bell sounds again, softer now, wrapped in smoke and stone. The dog steps off your foot, shakes itself, and looks up at you with the calm certainty of a creature who has made arrangements. You sigh, pull your cloak tighter, and follow the slow current of merchants and pilgrims beneath the shadow of Ludgate, carrying your bread, your charm, and the first uneasy knowledge that London has admitted you, which is not quite the same thing as welcoming you. You move only a little farther from Ludgate, yet the city already narrows around you, as if it has been waiting for the chance. The lane bends between timber houses whose upper stories lean out over the street, nearly touching above your head, their dark beams slick with mist and soot. From some windows hang cloths, cages, onions, old rushes shaken from floors, and unlabelled things in the half-light. London does not open itself like a courtly hall. It folds you in shoulder by shoulder, smell by smell, until the road behind you feels oddly distant like a cleaner dream. The ground beneath your boots changes from churned gate mud to a mixture of packed earth, broken straw, crushed shells, dung-spilled ale ashes and flat stones polished treacherous by countless feet. You step where others step because that seems wise, then discover that others are not always wise. One stone tilts under you and brown water rises around your soul with a soft sigh. The dog avoids the puddle entirely and trots along the edge, which feels like criticism. A woman opens a shutter above you and calls a warning that sounds courteous until a bucket follows. The contents slap into the gutter, steaming faintly in the cold. You stop just in time. A man behind you does not. He makes a noise that contains several sins, then remembers the church tower nearby and reduces them to mutters. Some swear a proper warning must be called before waste is thrown, though no one can quite agree how much warning is merciful when the street is narrow and everyone is already doomed by gravity. You press yourself against an oak door banded with iron. It is shut, bolted and marked with a chalk cross near the latch. Perhaps it is meant as a blessing. Perhaps it is meant to tell visitors that fever has visited within. Even now it is hard to tell whether the chalk comforts the household or the neighbours more. A sprig of rue has been tucked above the frame, dry and bitter smelling, for rue is said to turn away pestilence, fleas, sour luck, and women who ask too many questions depending on which grandmother is speaking. The door shifts under your shoulder. Someone inside coughs, then goes still. You step away gently. The lane thickens with evening trade. A boy carries 2 wooden buckets on a yoke water, slopping over his ankles as he weaves between carts. A tinker sits under a jutting eave, mending a pot by the glow of a rushlight. The rush burns in a little iron holder, making a thin, smoky flame from a reed dipped in fat. It is cheaper than a beeswax candle, and it smells like thrift has caught fire. Beside him, a woman sells onions from a wicker basket, their skins bright as dull gold in the gloom. She tells a passing man that onions draw sickness from the blood if placed beneath the bed. The man asks whether they draw money too. She says not from him. You continue careful and slow while the city's sounds layer over one another. Bells ring the hour from a parish church. Farther off another bell answers delayed and solemn. From an alehouse comes the low warmth of voices, a burst of laughter, the scrape of a bench, and the smell of malt smoke, wet wool, and something frying in old fat. The signboard outside shows a painted boar whose expression suggests it has heard the food is uncertain. Light seeps through the cracks around the door, golden and smoky, and for a moment you feel your cold fingers ache toward it. But you do not enter yet. This lane is still teaching you how to survive it. A cartwheel grinds close to your hip. You flatten yourself beside a stack of firewood, and the carter flicks his eyes toward you with no apology. Carts do not make way for strangers, neither do pigs. One pushes through the gutter, a head bristled and self-important, wearing a rope that trails behind it like a forgotten law. A grey-bearded man pursues it with a stick, and the exhausted dignity of someone losing an argument to pork. The dog watches with interest but chooses diplomacy. Householders peer from doorways as you pass. Their faces are half lit by hearth glow, suspicious because you exist near their thresholds after dusk. In London, a stranger is a question, and questions are best kept outdoors. One man with a leather apron asks your business. You tell him you seek lodging, warmth, and perhaps work. He grunts, which may mean all three are unlikely or supper burns. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether Londoners are unfriendly by nature or outnumbered by problems. You catch sight of the monk from the gate ahead, his ink-stained fingers tucked under his sleeve. He stands beneath a hanging lantern speaking to a hooded man. The monk's pouch, the one with too many knots, rests against his hip. When he notices you looking, he turns his face away toward a shrine set into the wall. The shrine holds a small painted saint behind cloudy glass with candle stubs gathered at the base. Someone has left a pin, a bead, and a crust of bread humble enough that heaven may accept them out of pity. You slow near the shrine because the lane ahead squeezes even tighter. Two apprentices shove past each other under the eaves, each carrying bundles of cloth. One mutters about a master's temper. The other says a verse under his breath, a little charm against being beaten, beginning with the name of St. Lawrence, who, having suffered on a gridiron, is considered useful by those who fear hot irons, harsh kitchens, and stern employers. No one can quite agree whether the charm works, but the boy says it anyway, and in this city that may be its own small armour. The smell worsens near a shallow ditch running along the lane. It carries rainwater kitchen slops, dye-stained trickles, and the city's private confessions toward the river. You lift your hem, your boot slips. For a breath you feel yourself tilt toward the ditch, toward an illness with a current. Then a hand catches your sleeve. It is the egg woman from the gate. Her basket is lighter now, or perhaps she has simply lost faith in eggs. She nods once, says nothing, and continues past you with the brisk mercy of someone who cannot afford conversation. The dog wags its tail as if it arranged the rescue. You steady yourself and move again beneath the leaning houses, past the alehouse glow, past the chalk-marked doors, past the shrine with its fading saint. Above, smoke crawls under the eaves. Below, the stones shine slick as fish skin. The bell you heard through the gate now rings evening over London's lanes. You walk on one careful step after another, learning that the city does not need a sword to threaten you. A puddle, a cart, a bucket, a bad smell, a stranger's glance, and your own tired foot are more than enough. You follow the lane as it widens by degrees, not generously. Never that, but enough for London to gather itself into a square where trade has already begun to wake beneath the grey morning of torches and mist. The evening is deepening, yet the market seems to live by its own hour, neither day nor night. Only hunger need coin, and the steady creak of wooden boards being set upon trestles. You come out from between leaning houses and find a space crowded with stalls, baskets, barrels, chopping blocks, hanging cloths, and people moving with the determined impatience of bees who have discovered tax records. The dog slips ahead, nose-low tail level, suddenly transformed from unwanted companion into experienced city guide. It knows which puddles to avoid, which butcher's boy kicks without looking, which fish stall may surrender a fallen scale or better. You keep close, though not so close that anyone might believe you are learning survival from a dog. Dignity, after all, has suffered enough today. At the centre of the square stands a market cross worn at the edges, its steps dark from many boots. Someone has tied a strip of blue cloth to a carved saint at its base. Someone else has left a cracked clay cup, perhaps as an offering, perhaps because it broke, and faith was nearby. A crier stands near the cross with a bell in one hand and a parchment in the other, calling out orders from the mayor, prices for bread punishments, for false measures, and warnings about night wandering. His voice rises and falls like a church chant that has become interested in onions. No one can quite agree whether criers make the city more orderly or merely louder, but everyone listens just enough to pretend obedience. The fishwives are nearest the damp edge of the square where baskets of river fish lie silver grey and dull blue upon straw. Eels twist in a tub with a patience that feels personal. Smoked fish hang from cords beneath a patched awning, and the smell of salt mud and old water thickens the air. One woman in a russet hood slaps a fish onto a board and praises it so highly you begin to suspect it has noble blood. Another argues with a man over the weight of herring, holding up her scales as though the Archangel Michael himself might descend to inspect them. Weights matter here. Measures matter. A loaf too small, a pot too shallow, a yard of cloth too short, and the whole city may rise into complaint. Near the cross, an official with a fur-lined hood tests loaves on a board, pressing them, weighing them, cutting one open to see whether the baker has filled honest bread with too much air bran or pious confidence. Some swear that a baker who cheats the assize will be dragged on a hurdle through the streets, which seems dramatic until you taste the price of hunger. Even now it is hard to tell whether London fears bad bread because of justice, or because everyone has teeth and opinions. You pass a butcher's stall where carcasses hang from iron hooks beneath the low roof of a booth. The butcher's arms are bare despite the cold red from work and weather, though nothing here is shown more closely than a sleepy mind wishes to see. His apprentice scrapes a block with sand and mutters that flies will come even in winter if invited by laziness. Above the stall hangs a sprig of evergreen tucked there for freshness luck, and perhaps to convince customers the meat has spent its last hours in a forest rather than a lane. The butcher catches you looking and smiles as if he could sell you either supper or a warning. Beyond him, spice sellers guard their wares like minor kings. Small cloth packets lie arranged on a table, pepper dark as monks ink saffron threads bright as sunset, caught in straw cinnamon curled like tiny bark scrolls, cloves sharp enough to sting the nose from a careful distance. A woman in a teal gown lifts a pinch of dried herbs to a customer's face and tells him it will sweeten the breath, warm the stomach, and defend the heart against foul air. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether spices truly protect against sickness, or simply make fear smell expensive. Either way, the man pays. You drift with the crowd, one hand close to your bundle. Apprentices hurry in pairs, carrying cloth baskets, tools, and messages shouted too late. Their caps are pulled low, their sleeves patched, their faces bright with youth and resentment. One boy bumps you and says, "Mind your road, though you're standing still." Another wears a little charm made of bone on a cord around his neck carved with a cross and a crescent moon. Some swear such charms keep a master's temper from landing too hard. Others say the better charm is to run errands quickly and never break a cup. A bell from the nearest church rolls over the square, softening nothing. The sound passes through steam rising from hot pies, through smoke from a brazier, through the cries of sellers and buyers. A woman sells pottage from a blackened pot, stirring it with a wooden ladle that seems old enough to remember better kings. Near her a baker stacks coarse loaves on a cloth. A boy watches them with the stillness of hunger, and the baker, without looking, tears off a burnt corner and drops it near the edge of the table. The boy snatches it and vanishes so swiftly the act feels both charitable and illegal. You see the egg woman again beside a stall of candles. Her basket is nearly empty now. She chooses one small tallow candle, not beeswax, because beeswax belongs to Church's wealthy homes and people whose purses have not been insulted at the gate. Tallow gives more smoke and smell, but it also gives light, and in London light is light, however humble. She nods when she sees you. In her other hand she holds a bunch of sage tied with thread. For the room, she says, though, whether she means for scent, sickness, spirits, or all three is left for the saints to sort. Near the market cross the ink-fingered monk stands partly hidden by a cloth stall, speaking with the same hooded man you glimpsed in the lane. His knotted pouch hangs beneath his sleeve. You do not move closer. London offers many lessons, and one of them is that not every mystery needs your fingerprints on it. The monk looks once toward the butcher's stall, once toward the crier, and then melts back into the market as neatly as spilled ink into parchment. A sudden quarrel flares by the fish baskets. A customer claims a measure is false. A fishwife claims his eyes are false. The official in the fur hood turns with great reluctance, and the crowd shifts to watch for public judgment, is one of the few entertainments that costs nothing. Voices rise. The eels in their tub continue as before, which suggests wisdom. The dog nudges your ankle, perhaps advising departure. You let the crowd carry you away from the argument. The market remains behind you in layers: salt fish, warm bread, wet wool, sharp pepper, old straw, candle smoke, human breath. Above the square, the roofs lean inward, trapping the noise like smoke beneath rafters. You feel how the city feeds itself, cheats itself, blesses itself, and threatens itself all at once. Every bargain is a little prayer, every scale a little trial, every loaf a promise that might be broken by weight, weather, or greed. As you edge toward the street that slopes in the direction of the bridge, the dog trots at your heel again, and the bell from the market crossfades behind you. You have not eaten properly, not yet, but the smells have entered you like memory. London's market has shown you its hands, busy, cold, clever, stained with work, and never quite open. You leave the market square by following the smell of warm grain and river damp, which is not a perfect guide, but in medieval London it is at least more honest than most men with ledgers. The street slopes and tightens, then loosens again, as more people begin moving in one direction, drawn toward the great bridge like iron filings toward a lodestone. Carts groan past with barrels and sacks. Porters bend beneath loads of firewood. A woman with a blue hood carries a tray of small pies covered by a cloth, and steam rises around her face like a saintly vision of supper. Your stomach, which has been silent out of politeness, now becomes theological. It would like answers. It would also like bread. Near the approach to London Bridge, food gathers wherever feet must slow. The bridge is still ahead, crowded with houses and shops built along its length, but here before it, beneath hanging signs and smoke-stained eaves, vendors have found all the little pauses in the traffic and filled them with hunger. A man sells coarse brown loaves from a board balanced on two barrels. A woman ladles pottage from an iron pot set over a charcoal brazier. Another offers smoked fish wrapped in rushes, their skins dull silver, their smell strong enough to make the dog sit down and reconsider its entire life. You stand beneath a sign painted with a faded key and count the coins in your palm. The toll at Ludgate has wounded your purse in a small but meaningful way. Still, hunger is not impressed by arithmetic. You buy a heel of coarse bread, a wooden bowl of pottage, and a cup of weak ale from a boy whose cheeks are red with cold, and whose thumb rests suspiciously close to the inside of the cup. When you look at it, he moves the thumb no farther than necessary. London has many measurements, and generosity is rarely one of them. The bread is dense, dark, and gritty at the crust made of maslin, perhaps wheat mixed with rye or whatever grain the baker could stretch without angering the assize too loudly. You tear it with your fingers. Steam rises from the pottage carrying the smell of peas, onions, leeks, oats, and something smoky that may once have known a pig from a respectful distance. It is thick enough to hold the spoon upright for a moment, which seems reassuring until you wonder what else might do the same. You sit on a low stone ledge near the wall of a cookshop where warmth seeps faintly through the plaster. Around you others eat, standing, crouching, leaning, bargaining between mouthfuls. A boatman in a patched russet cloak dunks bread into ale. 2 apprentices share a trencher piled with scraps and argue over which saint is best for toothache. One insists on St. Apollonia, whose name he says like a charm. The other says cloves work faster if you can afford them, which neither of them can. No one can quite agree whether saints prefer to be asked before or after the tooth has begun to howl. You lift the first spoonful of pottage carefully. It warms your mouth, then your throat, then that hollow place behind your ribs, where the cold has been living rent-free since the road. For a few breaths, London seems almost kind. The smoke from the brazier curls upward. The dog rests its chin on your boot. The bells that rang you through the gate are distant, now softened by roofs and river mist. Someone nearby hums under their breath while mending a strap with an awl and a strip of leather. Then you notice the cook wiping bowls with the same cloth he uses for his hands. Comfort and danger sit very close together here, close enough to share a bench. The ale may be safer than water, though it is sour and thin. The bread fills you, though grit catches between your teeth. The fish smells rich and good, yet it has travelled through hands, baskets, smokehouses, damp air, and perhaps one brief argument with a rat. Some swear that a pinch of salt, a prayer, and a hot coal dropped near the bowl will defend the stomach against bad humours. Others say the stomach must defend itself, being the only soldier available. A woman beside you unwraps smoked fish from a bundle of rushes and offers the vendor a look of deep suspicion. She asks when it was smoked. He says yesterday. She asks which yesterday. He laughs as though this is charming. She does not. Even now it is hard to tell whether London food sellers are liars by habit or merely poets under pressure. You decide on a small piece of fish anyway, because wisdom often loses to smell. The vendor cuts it with a short knife and places it on a scrap of stale trencher. The flesh is salty, firm and smoky, and your body receives it with gratitude before your mind can finish listing all possible consequences. You eat slowly. This is partly because it feels restful, partly because every bite in this city deserves negotiation. Across the lane, a cookshop doorway glows orange. Inside, you glimpse soot-black rafters, iron fire tongs hanging pots, rushes scattered over the floor, and a woman turning flat cakes on a griddle. A thin young apprentice, old enough for work and young enough to resent it, carries bowls to customers and gets scolded for walking as if he owns his feet. Near the hearth hangs a bundle of dried herbs, rosemary, sage, and perhaps hyssop tied with the red thread. Some swear the smoke of hyssop cleans foul air. Others say it mostly reminds people to open the shutters. A narrow friar stops near the brazier and blesses the pot in exchange for a ladleful. The cook accepts this as a fair bargain. The friar eats with solemn speed, then tells the gathered eaters that gluttony weakens the soul. His bowl is already empty, which gives the sermon a practical brevity you almost admire. The dog receives a crust from your hand. It takes the bread, gently steps back, and eats with the seriousness of a guildmaster inspecting accounts. For the first time since Ludgate, you feel almost companioned rather than followed. Its torn ear flicks when the bridge crowd roars ahead, where carts, animals, merchants and travellers compress before crossing. You're not ready to enter that crush yet. You stay with the warmth of the bowl, the rough bread, the sour ale, the smoky fish, and the small mercy of sitting still. Above you the hanging sign creaks. The river breathes beyond the houses. The pottage dwindles spoon by spoon, and with it some part of your fear loosens, not gone, never gone, but warmed into a quieter shape. Medieval London has not promised that this meal will be safe. It has only offered it hot, and for now, with your hands around the wooden bowl and the dog pressed against your boot, hot is enough. You rise from the low stone ledge with the warmth of pottage still gathered in your middle, though the cold is patient and already waiting at your sleeves. The wooden bowl is taken back by the boy with a suspicious thumb, wiped with the same tired cloth as before, and set ready for the next traveller, whose hunger is stronger than his imagination. You pull your cloak close, tuck the remaining bread into your bundle, and turn toward the river where London's breath grows darker and wetter. The Thames does not appear all at once. First it announces itself through smell-salt mud, fish scales, rotting reeds, tar smoke, wet rope, and something sour that makes your stomach remember every doubtful decision it has recently survived. Then you hear it not as a clean rush of water, but as a great low working sound beneath the city oars, knocking men, calling chains, dragging hulls, bumping against post gulls, crying like unpaid creditors. Only then do you glimpse the river between houses and timber stairs, broad and brown, beneath the mist carrying London as surely as any road. You step down toward the wharf, careful on slick boards greened by damp. The dog follows, but more cautiously now, as if even it respects water with this many opinions. Wherries bob beside the landing narrow boats with high prows and wet benches. Their boatmen stand wrapped in cloaks, caps low, hands hard and red around their oars. They call for passengers across the river, downriver, upriver, to Westminster, to Southwark, to any place a person may wish to go if he has coin and poor balance. One boatman catches your eye and offers a crossing for a price that could purchase dignity elsewhere. You shake your head. He shrugs and turns instantly to a merchant with finer shoes. Londoners do not waste disappointment. They sell it to the next man. Along the bank, labour continues in the damp evening. Porters bend beneath sacks from a moored barge. A rope maker coils hemp beside a shed, his fingers moving without looking. A cooper hammers at a barrel hoop with a wooden mallet, each dull strike swallowed by the fog. Near a set of steps, laundresses beat cloth against stones, their sleeves rolled, their arms red from cold water. They scrub shirts, aprons, caps and sheets in the same river that carries fish guts, tannery wash, kitchen slops, and whatever the city has chosen not to keep. No one can quite agree whether the Thames cleanses the linen or merely teaches it humility. One laundress has tied a blue bead to her wrist against cramp and chill. Another mutters that river spirits pinch fingers left too long in winter water. Some swear there are old things beneath the Thames that remember Roman walls and drowned bells, and that if you listen on certain foggy mornings you can hear them ringing under the mud. You listen now, but hear only oars, gulls, curses, and the soft slap of water against stone. Farther along the tanners have left their mark before you see them. The smell comes like a hand over the face hides, lime, urine, smoke, wet bark, and the heavy animal stink of work that respectable noses pretend not to need. Men stand in leather aprons near vats under a lean-to, stirring hides with poles. Their trade is necessary, profitable and unwelcome, which in London seems to describe nearly everything. Boots, belts, saddles, purses, gloves, hinges, scabbards, bindings for books, all these begin somewhere in that sour labour. A fine lady may wrinkle her nose at a tanner, then ride away sitting on his craft. You pass with your scarf drawn near your mouth. The dog sneezes twice and looks betrayed by civilization. The riverbank narrows near a drain where black water spills through an opening in the wall and mingles with the tide. A boy tosses sweepings from a basket into the current. Straw cabbage leaves fish bones, broken rushes, ashes, and a grey feather turn together and drift away. The Thames accepts everything without comment. It carries refuse past church towers and merchant halls, past noble barges and fishing nets, past hospitals, prisons, mills and shrines. Wealth moves on this river in barrels and bales. Sickness moves beside it in silence. Even now it is hard to tell whether Londoners fear the river enough. They fear its floods, certainly. They fear drowning ice fog thieves at the stairs, and bad ferrymen who overload a wherry until it sits low as a spoon in stew. But the slower dangers are harder to name. You watch a woman fill 2 wooden buckets from a quieter eddy, then tuck a sprig of fennel over one handle. Perhaps she will boil it. Perhaps she will brew ale. Perhaps she trusts the fennel to sweeten what the river has made doubtful. Some swear fennel sharpens the eyes and guards the belly. You hope it is feeling ambitious. A bell rings from somewhere upriver, muted by fog. The sound travels differently over water stretched thin and silver. It reminds you of the bell at Ludgate, the first deep note that followed you from the road, and of the market bell calling out prices beneath the cross. London is stitched together by bells and drains, by prayers and gutters, by the holy and the unspeakable sharing the same weather. You pause near a mooring post slick with tar. Across the river shapes blur in the mist roof sheds perhaps the darker line of Southwark, with its inns and stews and uncertain reputations. A barge slides past heavy with firewood. Its lantern glows amber through the fog, and for a moment the whole river looks like dark vellum marked with gold leaf. The boatman at the stern sings under his breath a low rough tune about a girl, a miller, and a miracle that becomes less holy with every verse. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether river songs are meant to pass time, frighten ghosts, or warn listeners that sailors should not be trusted with rhymes. Near the next stair the ink-fingered monk appears again. You see him only briefly through the river haze, standing beside the hooded man from the market. The monk's knotted pouch rests under his cloak, but now he holds something small in his palm wrapped in cloth. The hooded man bends close. A wherry rocks below them, its boatman pretending not to watch, with the practiced skill of a man watching everything. You slow without meaning to. The dog stops too. The monk looks up. For a heartbeat, his pale face turns toward you sharp beneath his hood. Then he closes his hand around the little wrapped thing and steps down into the wherry. The hooded man follows. The boat pushes off oars, dipping quietly into the brown water. In 3 strokes, fog begins to take them. In 6, they are only shapes. In 10, London has swallowed another secret and asked you for proof. You do not follow, you are learning. Instead, you stand at the river's edge while the tide noses against the steps. A scrap of red thread floats past, then a cabbage leaf, then a sliver of candle wax pale as a broken moon. The city behind you mutters and clatters. The city before you fades into mist. Your cloak smells of smoke, fish tannery's wet wool, and the pottage that still warms you faintly from within. The Thames moves on carrying boats. Prayers filth coin rumour, and the breath of thousands pressed behind walls. You understand quietly and without drama that London does not simply sit beside the river. It drinks from it, works through it, fouls it, blesses it, fears it, and depends upon it like a tired body depends upon a troubled heart. You turn from the water, at last the dog close at your heel, and follow the muffled sound of a church bell rising through the fog. You follow the bell away from the Thames, up a narrow rise where the river smell loosens its grip and gives way to smoke-damp timber and the woolly breath of crowded houses. The fog clings to your cloak as if it has paid for lodging there. Behind you, the water keeps moving with its patient brown secrets. Ahead, the church bell rings again, closer now, not loud but steady, a low metal voice calling the fearful, the cold, the guilty, and anyone else who prefers a roof between themselves and London's weather. The church stands wedged among shops and leaning houses older than some, poorer than others, its stone darkened by soot and rain. A small porch shelters the door, and above it a carved saint has lost one hand and most of his nose, which does not seem to have reduced his responsibilities. Someone has tucked holly and rosemary into a crack beside him. Someone else has tied a strip of linen around the iron latch, perhaps in thanks for healing, perhaps in hope of it. No one can quite agree whether such little rags carry prayers upward or merely remind heaven how many people are waiting. You push the oak door inward, and warmth meets you softly, though not enough to be generous. The church smells of wax-damp stone, rushes, old wool, cold breath and incense that lingers like a memory of richer ceremonies. The floor is strewn with rushes trodden flat in places fresher near the altar, where someone has tried to make holiness smell less like boots. Beeswax candles burn in clusters before painted saints, their flames small and gold, each one trembling when the door shuts behind you. Your eyes adjust slowly. At first you see only flame and shadow. Then the shapes gather: a woman kneeling with her forehead pressed to clasped hands, a man in a leather apron standing stiffly near a pillar, two children-sized shadows that turn out to be bundled sacks, thank goodness, and an old pilgrim sleeping upright against the wall with his mouth open, in the peaceful manner of a saint who has lost interest in posture. The dog slips in after you pauses, as if considering doctrine, then settles near the door where the rushes are dry. A priest moves near the chancel screen, his robe patched at the hem. He trims a candle with a little knife and catches the blackened wick in a dish. A clerk with ink-stained fingers copies names into your small book by candlelight, his quill scratching softly. Not the suspicious monk from the river, you think, though, in this wavering light. All holy men seem made of the same wax and caution. The clerk dips his pen, writes, pauses, blows gently and writes again. Daily life here has its ledgers too: baptisms, burials, gifts, debts, candles paid for candles, promised candles begged. You step nearer to a side altar where a painted panel shows a saint standing very calmly beside a beast that looks less calm. Before the image sits a small wooden box bound with iron. A notice, spoken more often than read, claims it holds a thread from a holy robe, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the thread came from a saint, a bishop, or an old vestment cupboard with ambition. Still people kneel before it. They touch the box lightly. They whisper names into the dimness as if names can be tucked through the iron and carried elsewhere. You warm your hands near the candles without touching them. Beeswax is costly, and a careless sleeve can become a sermon quickly. Beside the altar lies a heap of offerings, bent pins, little wax legs, wax hands, a tiny wax ear, a wooden crutch, no longer needed or no longer useful, and a row of pilgrim badges gone dull with handling. Some swear that leaving a wax shape of the afflicted part helps draw mercy toward the body. A wax foot for a lame foot, a wax eye for a clouded eye, a wax tooth for a tooth that has made its owner regret having a jaw. A woman in a green hood kneels with a baby's cap in her hands, though no baby is with her. Her lips move quickly. You look away because sorrow in a church feels private even when it is kneeling in public. Near the pillar, the leather-aproned man rubs a charm between his thumb and finger. It is a scrap of parchment folded tight and sewn into cloth, likely written with a prayer, a blessing, or words he cannot read, but trusts because someone else charged him for them. Even now it is hard to tell whether the charm comforts his soul, his body, or only the frightened place between them. A low murmur rises and falls around you. A merchant asks protection for a journey. A servant asks forgiveness for a spoon broken in haste. An old woman asks Saint Roch to keep pestilence from her street, and she has brought a sprig of rue bitter and sharp like the one above the chalk-marked door you passed earlier. The priest accepts it with grave patience and places it near the candles. Londoners bargain carefully with heaven, a candle for a fever, a coin for a safe berth, a whispered vow for a son at sea, a pin for a lost cow, because even cows apparently require celestial administration. Near the door a man sells little lead tokens from a tray each stamped with a saint's sign. He's not loud about it. Loud trade belongs outside. Here he murmurs, for safe travel for sore bones, for clean water for sleep. Clean water seems the boldest claim. You buy nothing but you look. One token shows a tiny key, another a scallop shell, another a cross, so roughly made it resembles two sticks having a disagreement. The dog sniffs the tray and is gently discouraged by a shoe. The priest begins a short prayer and the church settles. You stand with your head bowed because everyone else does, and because the posture is restful. The Latin flows over you, mostly beyond your understanding, yet soft enough to soothe. You catch only fragments, mercy-light deliverance. The candles flicker. Smoke lifts in pale threads towards soot-dark rafters. Outside, wheels clatter past and someone shouts in the lane, but the thick stone softens the city's teeth. When the prayer ends, people do not rush away. They linger. A church is not only a house of God here, it is shelter, meeting place, news, board, memory, chest, and sometimes the only dry corner that does not demand you buy ale. You rest against a pillar and feel the cold drain slowly from your fingers. Your cloak steams faintly. The dog sighs. The bell rope sways in the tower above, and one last vibration hums through the stones. You think of the river carrying filth and coin, of the market scales of a Ludgate's toll candle, of the monk vanishing into fog with a wrapped secret in his hand. Here before candles and questionable relics, London seems to confess that it is afraid of itself. It builds walls, counts loaves, tests, measures, rings, bells, burns, herbs, blesses water pins, charms under collars, and still comes here at dusk to ask for one more night. You stay until the nearest candle burns lower, half spent and golden at the edge, and the church grows quieter around you. Then, with your hands warmer and your fear folded smaller, you turn toward the door, not eager for the lanes again, but less alone beneath their smoke. You step out of the church as if leaving a pocket of dim mercy, and London receives you again with smoke-damp air and the steady complaint of wheels over stone. The church door closes behind you with a wooden sigh. For a moment the warmth of beeswax and whispered prayers lingers in your sleeves, but the lane is cold enough to take back almost anything. Your breath clouds before your face. The dog shakes itself beside you, scattering church dust from its coat as though absolution itches. The bell above you gives a final low note, then falls silent. Somewhere beyond the roofs another bell answers thinner and farther away, threading the evening together. You pull your cloak close and move toward the alehouse glow you noticed earlier, the one with the painted boar on its sign. The boar still hangs from its iron bracket, creaking in the mist, its faded eyes full of weary knowledge. No one can quite agree whether painted tavern animals are meant to welcome travellers or warn them that beasts have already judged the kitchen. A strip of yellow light spills beneath the alehouse door. Smoke leaks from the roof hole and gathers under the eaves before sliding into the lane. The smell is strong, malt-damp wool, rushes, sweat, wood smoke, onions, old fat, and a sweetness from spilled ale that has soaked into the floor so deeply it may now own the building. You pause with your hand on the latch. Inside, voices rise and sink like water in a crowded harbour, You enter. Warmth wraps around you at once, rough and smoky and imperfect, but still warmth. The room is low-ceilinged with soot-black rafters pressed close overhead. Rushes cover the beaten floor, scattered with herbs that have long since surrendered to boots. A hearth burns at one end, orange and restless, its smoke wandering upward with only partial obedience. Iron fire tongs lean against the stones. A black pot hangs over the flames, breathing out the smell of onions and beans. Benches crowd around trestle tables, and every bench seems already occupied by elbows, cups, knives, bundles, and men who do not look as if they move for strangers. You do not ask for much. In London, that's a useful beginning. The alewife stands behind a board set on barrel sleeves, rolled hair, covered by a linen coif face shining with heat and command. She has the stillness of someone who knows exactly who has paid, who has not, and who will soon attempt poetry instead of coin. Behind her sit jugs, wooden cups, a small tally stick, and a dish of salt. A bunch of dried rosemary hangs near the hearth, meant to sweeten the air or keep sickness away, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether rosemary protects drinkers from foul humours or merely makes poor ale feel supervised. You set down a coin. She bites it lightly, not hard enough to flatter you, then pours a cup from a jug. The ale is cloudy brown and weak with a sour edge that tells you it has lived a short but complicated life. You take it gratefully. Ale is ordinary here, daily, almost domestic. Children drink small ale, workers drink ale, monks brew ale, and weary travellers cling to ale as if it has better judgment than river water. The cup is not clean in any heroic sense, but it is yours for the moment, which is the kind of victory London permits. You find a place near the hearth between a labourer with clay on his boots and a sailor whose cloak smells of tar and rain. The dog slips under the bench before anyone can object. It chooses a position near the heat and places its chin on its paws with the calm of a creature who has never once paid rent. The labourer glances at you then, at your bundle. From outside, you nod. He gives a soft grunt, still alive then. It seems rude to agree too proudly. Around you, the alehouse moves in layers. A pair of dice clicks across a table near the wall, watched by 3 men and judged by 4 more who pretend not to care. A woman in a saffron hood mends a sleeve by firelight, her needle flashing small and quick. A carter sleeps with his forehead on crossed arms, while his companion eats from a trencher, occasionally nudging him upright when his hair drifts too near a candle. Near the hearth, 2 sailors argue over which river stair has the worst thieves, and both make strong cases for all of them. The alewife moves through the room with a jug in one hand and correction in the other. She scolds a man for leaning on the breadboard, snaps at a boy to fetch more wood, and tells a dice player that if he swears by St. Peter one more time over such low stakes, St. Peter may come down and collect personally. This creates a respectful silence of nearly 3 breaths. You drink slowly. The ale is not delicious, but it is warm enough from the room to soften your throat. The firelight settles on faces, turning noses, brows and cheekbones into small islands of gold. Smoke gathers in the rafters until the ceiling seems to carry a second, darker roof. Your eyes water. No one comments. In this room, tears may be caused by sorrow, smoke, onions, ale, debt marriage, or dice, and it is polite not to investigate. A sailor leans closer to the labourer and lowers his voice, though not enough to prevent half the bench from hearing. He speaks of a monk seen near the river with a hidden packet, and of a hooded man who pays boatmen in good silver. Your hand stills around the cup. The labourer says monks carry all sorts of things: relics, letters, pardons, debts, bones, secrets, and occasionally cheese. Some swear that false relics pass through London more often than honest pilgrims. Others say even a false relic may do good if the prayer beside it is true. Even now it is hard to tell whether faith becomes stronger or weaker when it must travel wrapped in cloth. You remember the monk's ink-stained fingers, the knots on his pouch, the way fog swallowed his wherry. You say nothing. London has already taught you that curiosity is best sipped like strong ale slowly and not on an empty stomach. At the dice table, a dispute begins as gently as a spark in straw. One man claims the throw was cocked. Another says the dice landed fair. A third, who has no money on the table, becomes the loudest expert. The alewife turns her head. That is all she does. The dispute lowers itself at once, like a dog remembering the size of a stick. This, you decide, is authority. A bowl of beans and onions comes your way, passed from hand to hand after you pay another small coin. You eat with your wooden spoon, blowing on each mouthful. The food is plain smoky and filling. The trencher beneath it has soaked up enough broth to become desirable, and you save it for last. Beside your boot, the dog receives a small scrap from the labourer, then another from the sailor, and accepts both with professional seriousness. It may not belong to you, but it is clearly building a network. The room grows softer as the hour deepens. Men speak lower. The fire settles. Rain begins outside, ticking against the shutters and dripping from the eaves. Wet newcomers enter, bringing gusts of cold and the smell of the lane, but the hearth swallows them one by one. For a little while you're simply another shadow among shadows, another traveller with damp wool steaming by the fire, another pair of hands wrapped round a wooden cup. Yet rest in London never lies completely flat. A purse cord is checked. A door latch is watched. A drunk man laughs too long, then falls quiet. The dice disappear when a watchman's voice passes outside. The alewife's eyes miss nothing. Above the hearth, the rosemary turns black at the edges, still pretending to purify the room. You finish your ale and feel sleep tug at you, but not gently enough to trust. The dog lifts its head. Outside, through rain and smoke, a curfew. Bell begins to sound somewhere beyond the roofs. You sit a moment longer in the fire glow, letting its warmth sink into your knees while the city waits beyond the door, with wet stones, shuttered windows, and all the sharp little edges of night. You leave the alehouse after the curfew bell has begun to thin into the rain, not because the room has grown unkind, but because London never lets warmth become free for too long. The alewife has already glanced at your empty cup twice, and the bench beside the hearth has become valuable territory. You rise slowly, feeling the ache in your knees answer the damp wool of your cloak, and the dog slips out from beneath the bench, as if it has been waiting for your courage to catch up. Outside the lane shines black under the rain. Torchlight trembles in puddles. The painted boar creaks above the alehouse door, now looking less like a warning, and more like a creature grateful not to have feet. You pull your hood low and step into the narrow street where the rush of the alehouse fades behind you and sharper voices carry under the eaves. At first you think it's a quarrel, but as you move closer you see apprentices gathered where the lane widens near a shuttered shop. They are not boys, not quite men dressed in patched wool leather belts, stained aprons and caps pulled low against the rain. Some carry bundles from their masters' shops. Others carry nothing but restless energy, which in London may be the more dangerous load. A few hold wooden practice sticks, not swords, though in poor light, and foolish hands. The difference feels mostly legal. They are playing a rough street game with a leather ball darkened by mud. It is kicked, shoved, slapped, lost under a cart, recovered with triumph, and blamed on everyone. 2 apprentices from a clothier's shop shout at 2 from a fishmonger's lane. A third group, perhaps from a baker, perhaps from nowhere respectable, cheers for whichever side is closer to falling. No one can quite agree whether such games strengthen young bodies, corrupt young morals, or simply give masters 10 quiet breaths indoors. The dog watches the ball with interest, then looks at you. You give it the smallest shake of your head. The dog ignores this, but remains where it is, which may be the closest thing to obedience it has ever considered. You try to pass along the wall, keeping near the oak doors and shuttered shop fronts. Above one doorway hangs a wooden sign painted with shears. Above another, a boot above another, a bunch of grapes that seems optimistic in this weather. Many trades mark themselves this way, for not everyone reads letters, but nearly everyone understands a shoe, a fish, a candle, or a cup. A guild is not merely a trade here. It is rule, family prison ladder, promise and punishment, all tied together with oaths and account books. One apprentice shoulders past you and mutters, "Mind yourself." You do it once and deeply. His sleeve bears the grease and fine pale dust of a baker's boy. His hands are cracked from flour and cold water, and a string of blue beads hangs from his belt. Some swear blue beads turn aside envy, and apprentices being surrounded by masters, rivals hunger and impossible chores have much envy to turn aside. Even now it is hard to tell whether the beads guard him from others' ill wishes or from his own. A shout goes up as the bull strikes a rain barrel and sends water slapping across the stones. One clothier's apprentice claims the fishmonger's lad tripped him. The fishmonger's lad says the clothier runs like a wet hen wearing Sunday shoes. This insult is received with great seriousness. The circle tightens. A peaceful lane, you discover, does not become dangerous all at once. It leans that way slowly like a tired house. From an upstairs window a master calls down for his apprentice, promising consequences in a voice that has practiced them. The apprentice pretends not to hear, which is bold, given that the whole street hears. Another shutter opens and a woman throws not waste this time, thank heaven, but a word sharp enough to have weight. She tells them to break their own bones somewhere else. A tall apprentice with a leather worker's apron steps into the middle and raises his stick. Not high, not yet. Just enough for everyone to see that his patience has become decorative. Around him faces gleam wet in torchlight, young, tired, hungry, proud. They serve long years for room board training, and the hope of one day becoming masters themselves, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether apprenticeship is a noble road to skill or a very slow method of being shouted at by a man with better shoes. You edge behind a cart stacked with empty baskets. One wheel is cracked, bound hastily with cord, and you remember the broken wheel near the gatehouse, waiting in your future thoughts, though for now this one merely groans in the rain. The dog slides beside you, wise at last, perhaps because youthful male pride smells worse than tanneries. A boy with ink on his cuff appears from a side passage carrying a small bundle of folded parchment wrapped in cloth. For one brief moment you think of the monk by the river, his hidden packet and knotted pouch, but this boy is only a scrivener's apprentice, thin-faced and anxious. He presses the bundle under his arm and tries to pass through the group. Someone snatches his cap. Laughter jumps along the lane. The scrivener's boy stops, cheeks bright with anger and shame. He reaches for the cap. It is tossed over his head to another apprentice, then another. A small cruelty not grand enough for ballads, but London is built of such small things. Wet stones, short measures, quick hands, and laughter at the wrong person. You feel your own hand tighten around your bundle. Before the game can grow meaner, the baker's boy with the blue beads catches the cap, and perhaps from kindness, perhaps from boredom, drops it back onto the scrivener's head. "Go on, Crowfeather," he says, "before your master dries up and blows away." The scrivener's boy clutches the cap and slips past you, breathing hard. As he passes, you notice a tiny parchment charm sewn to the inside of his sleeve, marked with cramped writing and a little cross. Some apprentices wear prayers against beatings, bad luck, ink spills, knife slips, fire fever, or the terrible possibility of disappointing a master before breakfast. Whether the charm works, no one can quite agree. But his fingers touch it once as he hurries into the rain. The leather worker's apprentice lowers his stick. The ball is found again under the cart, and the quarrel, having almost become something sharper, softens back into noise. Feet splash. Someone laughs. Someone coughs. Somewhere a master calls again, louder now, and this time 2 apprentices scatter, suddenly remembering duty with the speed of saints receiving visions. You move on while they return to their muddy game. Behind you, the leather ball thuds against a wall. The apprentices shout, the blue beads flash in torchlight, and the rain keeps falling over all of them without preference. London's young workers fill the lane with rough life, half-trained and half-starved for freedom, bound by guild rules and household discipline, yet still pushing, joking, insulting and playing beneath the eyes of masters who once did the same. Your cloak is wetter now. Your bread bundle presses against your ribs. The dog trots close, choosing your side over the ball, which feels like trust or exhaustion. Ahead, the lane bends into deeper shadow, and the last glow of the alehouse fades behind you. You walk carefully, listening to the apprentices' voices dissolve into rain, and you understand that in London even youth has edges, even laughter has teeth, and even a game in the mud can remind you how thin the peace of the city truly is. You turn from the apprentices' lane with their laughter thinning behind you, and the city seems to draw a colder breath. Rain has eased into a fine mist, finding every seam in your cloak and every tired place in your bones. The dog keeps close now, its torn ear dark with wet, its paws making soft taps through the shallow muck. You follow a side street where the houses lean inward and the signs grow smaller, a painted mortar and pestle, a carved tooth, a wooden hand with 2 fingers missing, and at last a lantern burning greenish behind horn. The ache begins in your belly first, or perhaps it has been there since the pottage near the bridge, and has only waited for a dramatic street. It is not terrible, only uncertain. In medieval London, uncertainty in the stomach is treated with the respect one gives a distant army. Perhaps it will pass, perhaps it is already at the gate. A woman under an eave sees you pause with one hand at your middle. Physician there, she says, nodding toward the greenish lantern. Or apothecary, or barber, depends what coin you show. Still warmth shines from the doorway, and the smell drifting out is stranger than alehouse smoke, but not worse. Dried mint vinegar, beeswax, stale wool, sharp herbs, and the faint iron tang of tools kept clean enough to be proud of themselves. You duck inside before your courage can study the sign too closely. The room is small and low, with shelves crowded along the walls. Bundles of herbs hang upside down from rafters, sage-rue, rosemary, wormwood, betony, lavender, and things so dry and twisted they look like little defeated trees. Earthen jars sit beside stoppered bottles. A brass mortar rests on a table scarred by knife marks. Rushes cover the floor, mixed with crushed lavender, perhaps to sweeten the room, perhaps to convince fear to behave. A man stands at the table in a dark wool gown lined with worn fur. His cap is round his beard, neat, his hands pale from the cold despite the fire. These, you think, are the hands from every warning, clean, careful, expensive, and not necessarily kind. Beside him works a younger assistant in a leather apron, grinding something in the mortar with the grim rhythm of a bell ringer punished by spices. The physician looks you over without hurry. Road stomach, he says. You have not spoken. He gestures to a stool. You sit because your knees agree before your mind does. The dog tries to enter fully, but the assistant points at it with the pestle. The dog sits just inside the threshold, offended by medical policy. On a shelf near your shoulder stands a row of urine flasks, rounded glass vessels held up to catch candlelight. Their colours range from pale straw to deep amber, each one tied with parchment. The physician lifts one from a basket, brought by another patient, turns it gently and studies it like a scholar reading weather. Some swear a skilled man can read illness from colour sediment bubbles, and smell as if the body writes letters in its water. No one can quite agree whether the body writes clearly or physicians merely enjoy mysterious handwriting. He asks what you ate, where you slept, whether you have been near foul water, whether you have touched a sick door, whether your dreams have been troubled, and whether anyone looked at you with envy. You answer as best you can. This takes some time because London is made almost entirely of foul water, sick doors, troubled dreams, and envious looks. The physician nods gravely, which makes everything worse. He presses cold fingers to your wrist and counts beneath his breath. He asks to see your tongue. He frowns at it with professional disappointment. Then he opens a small wooden box. Inside, dark leeches curl in damp moss, glossy and patient. You become extremely aware of your own blood, though nothing dramatic happens. The physician notices your expression and closes the box halfway. "Not yet," he says. "Could you say perhaps too quickly?" Leeches, the physician explains, may draw an excess humour when the blood grows hot or rebellious. Herbs may cool, warm, dry, or moisten what has gone astray. Vinegar may cleanse foul air. A charm may steady the spirit, and the spirit may steady the flesh in return. Even now it is hard to tell whether his certainty comes from learning habit, or the fact that frightened people pay more willingly when remedies arrive in confident order. A woman on the far bench clutches a cloth bundle against her chest. She wears a pilgrim badge on her hood and a strip of red thread around her wrist. She has come for a sleeping draught for her husband, who coughs at night and swears there is a black bird sitting on the bedpost. The physician gives her dried poppy carefully measured and tells her to steep it thinly, not strongly, unless she wants sleep to become too ambitious. She crosses herself and leaves with the caution of someone carrying both hope and danger in the same pouch. Your turn returns. Instead of leeches, praise be to every candle in the church, the physician gives you a bitter draught of mint fennel and wormwood, sweetened with just enough honey to make the betrayal personal. He places a little salt on your tongue, tells you to avoid river water unless boiled into ale, and suggests that you sleep with your head raised if your breath grows tight. The assistant ties a sprig of rue and rosemary with thread and hands it to you. "For foul air," he says, "and fleas if they respect herbs." The physician also offers a parchment charm folded small for protection against sudden fever. It bears Latin words written by a clerk whose letters crawl like winter twigs. You think of the church, the wax offerings, the monk's hidden packet, the scrivener's boy touching the charm in his sleeve. London is full of folded words pressed against frightened skin. Some swear the right words must be written at the right hour under the right saint's attention. Others say any words will do if the payer cannot read them. You pay for the draught and the herbs, not the charm. Your purse is thinning like a bad candle. The physician does not look offended. He has seen poverty before. It probably has its own shelf. As you stand, warmth shifts in your belly, not healing exactly, but reassurance shaped like heat. The draught tastes dreadful enough that you believe it must be useful. Outside, a cart rattles past and a bell sounds somewhere through the mist. The dog rises at once, ready to continue its unpaid service. At the door, you glance back. The physician has already lifted another flask to the candle, turning another person's fear in glass. The assistant grinds herbs. The leeches wait in their moss with medieval patience. You step into the lane carrying rue rosemary bitter breath, and the uneasy comfort of having survived treatment, which in London feels almost as fortunate as surviving the illness. You step back into the lane with the physician's bitter herb still clinging to your tongue, and London seems to have grown wetter while you were indoors. Rain comes down in thin silver lines, not heavy enough to clear the air, only steady enough to make every surface shine. It beads on your hood, gathers at your shoulders, and runs from the rooftops in patient threads. The dog sniffs once at the sprig of rue, and rosemary in your hand decides medicine is a poor substitute for supper and trots beside you beneath the dripping eaves. The street bends toward a smaller gatehouse set within an inner wall, and passage a place where carts are checked. Burdens are argued over, and men with keys decide who may pass from one part of the city's busy body into another. You do not need to leave London, not yet, but the rain has driven people into the shelter of the arch, and the crowd itself carries you there. In this city you often move because others move. Choice is a luxury best kept dry. The gatehouse squats ahead, square and dark, its stones wet as river pebbles. A lantern burns beneath the arch, and its light trembles over guards, merchants, baskets, bundles, barrels, and one cart tilted miserably on 3 good wheels and 1 broken one. The wheel has split near the hub, bound with rope and hope, which are both useful materials until weight becomes involved. Beside it stands the carter, a broad man in a soaked brown cloak, staring at the damage as if stern disappointment may mend oak. You recognize the feeling. Medieval travel mostly consists of objects breaking at the least poetic moment. You slip under the arch with the dog, grateful for even this cramped shelter. Rain ticks on the roof above, and pours from the edges in steady strings. The air beneath the gatehouse is thick with wet wool, horse, sweat iron, damp straw, and the sour patience of delayed people. Rushes have been scattered over the stones, but they are mashed flat and blackened by boots. A half-burned candle stands near the guard's table, its flame bending whenever the wind noses through the passage. It reminds you of the toll candle at Ludgate, honey-coloured and careful, though this one is tallow and smells less like devotion than a tired sheep. A guard with a red nose and a fur-lined cap sits by the table, warming one hand around a cup of ale, while the other rests near a ring of iron keys. The keys are large, black and serious. They hang from his belt when he rises, knocking softly against his thigh like a small argument of metal. Some swear a gate key kept beneath a pillow guards against nightmares and wandering spirits. No one can quite agree whether this is because iron has power, because gates keep things out, or because a key that size would make any spirit reconsider the bed. Near the wall, 2 prisoners sit on a bench under which their wrists tied with rope rather than chains. One is a thin man with a bruised cheek and a wool cap pulled low. The other is older, wrapped in a patched cloak, looking less guilty than inconvenienced. They do not appear dangerous. They appear wet. A woman nearby whispers that one stole a purse near the bridge. Another says he only owed a debt. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, especially when the tale is being told within earshot of the accused. The older prisoner catches you looking and gives a small shrug as if to say, "London has many benches and this is simply tonight's." A merchant with a saffron lining to his cloak argues with the guard over a barrel of lamp oil. He claims the seal has already been inspected. The guard claims seals can lie, especially when merchants stand near them. A clerk beside the table scratches notes into a wax tablet with a stylus, smoothing the surface now and then with his thumb. His fingers are stained dark from ink, and for a moment your thoughts leap to the suspicious monk by the river, to the packet wrapped in cloth, and the wherry fading into fog. But this clerk is younger, rounder, and more interested in not getting rain on his sleeves. The broken cart blocks half the passage. Its load of winter turnips has shifted, and several have rolled loose, pale and muddy, beneath people's feet. A woman steps on one and nearly falls into a porter carrying a crate of clay cups. The porter hisses a prayer through his teeth, perhaps to St. Christopher, perhaps to any saint specializing in pottery and balance. Even now it is hard to tell whether London's miracles are grand events or merely cups that do not break when dropped. The carter kneels by the wheel with 2 men helping him. They wedge a block beneath the axle, then try to bind the cracked spokes tighter with rope. One man suggests soaking the rope first so it will shrink as it dries. Another says it will never dry in this weather. A third, who contributes nothing with his hands, advises them all loudly. This appears to be his trade. You wait with the others. Waiting in medieval London is not empty time. It is crowded with listening. You hear rain sliding over stone horses, shifting a baby crying somewhere beyond the arch, the dull thud of barrels being set down, the clink of keys, the clerk's stylus on wax, the prisoners murmuring together, the dog licking rainwater from its paw. From outside the gatehouse comes the far softened sound of bells marking an hour no one here can hurry. A woman in a dark green cloak opens a small pouch and takes out a pinch of dried lavender. She rubs it between her palms and breathes in. For foul air, she says when she notices your glance. You lift your sprig of rue and rosemary in answer. She nods gravely as if you are both scholars of invisible enemies. Some swear foul air creeps thickest in rain, pressed low by the clouds, until it crawls along the ground and into the lungs. Others say rain washes the air clean. The argument seems unresolved by the smell beneath the gatehouse. At last the wheel is bound well enough to move, which is not the same as repaired. The carter rises mud on his knees, and the oxen lean forward with deep reluctance. The cart jolts. The cracked wheel groans. Everyone under the arch holds their breath, not from sympathy alone, but because if it breaks again, no one is going anywhere. It turns once, twice, then rolls just far enough for the passage to loosen. The guard lifts his hand. The merchant with the lamp oil gathers his dignity. The prisoners are led to their feet. The clerk smooths his wax tablet and tucks it beneath his cloak. People begin to pass through in slow order, each one damp, tired, and eager to be somewhere else. London's order has held, but only just stitched together by rope keys shouting, and the common desire not to stand in rain forever. You move with the current, the dog close enough now that its wet fur brushes your ankle. As you leave the shelter of the gatehouse, the rain softens to mist again. Behind you, the half-burned candle gutters beside the guard's table, and the broken cart creaks onward into the dark. You carry with you the smell of wet wool, tallow smoke iron keys, and turnips crushed underfoot, and you understand that London is not ruled by peace so much as by delays survived one at a time. You leave the gatehouse with the smell of wet turnips and tallow smoke still clinging to your cloak, and the city draws you onward through lanes that seem to change their character every few dozen steps. London is like that. One doorway breathes poverty, the next roasts capons, and between them the rainwater carries both smells together as if fairness were a thing best dissolved in gutters. The dog keeps near your heel, damp and loyal in the practical way of creatures who understand kitchens. The mist thins as you pass under a timber gallery, where laundry hangs stiff and grey dripping onto the road below. Beyond it, a warmer glow spills from a wide yard behind a wealthy house. The gate to the yard stands half open, while servants hurry in and out with baskets, faggots of wood-covered dishes, and the strained expressions of people who are not allowed to be tired until someone richer has finished eating. You slow, not entering, only passing close enough to feel the heat. Inside the yard, the kitchen stands apart from the main hall, its roof venting smoke into the damp air. This is sensible, since fire is the old enemy of crowded timber cities, though medieval sensibility often arrives after several disasters and calls itself wisdom. A boy turns a spit before a roaring hearth, his face shining with sweat despite the cold. Birds roast there, brown and glistening. A cook in a stained apron shouts for more salt, more onions, more trenchers, more hands, more time, and possibly a better class of universe. The smell is magnificent and almost cruel: roasted meat, pepper cloves, hot fat leeks, garlic, fresh bread, and wine warming with spices. Your stomach, recently soothed by the physician's bitter draught, forgets its manners and listens. Servants carry wooden platters toward the hall. One bears trenchers made of thick stale bread cut flat to receive meats and sauces. Another carries a covered dish as carefully as a relic, and you think of the church box with its doubtful holy thread. No one can quite agree whether rich men trust relics more than recipes, but both seem to travel under cloth with solemn faces. At the far side of the yard, a steward checks items against a tally stick. Notches mark what has come from the storehouse: smoked bacon, dried peas, salt fish, flour, onions, ale, candles, and perhaps spices locked away with more concern than some children. Winter stores matter deeply. A household survives the cold by counting what summer and autumn have left behind. Barrels are sealed, hams hang in smoke, apples wrinkle in straw, cheeses sit under cloth, grain waits in bins guarded from damp mice servants' hunger and the suspicious arithmetic of cooks. A maid slips past carrying a basket of scraps, bones crusts, onion skins, bruised apples, and pieces of trencher soaked dark with gravy. She sees you near the open gate and does not stop, but her eyes flick once toward the dog. A moment later, when no steward watches, she drops a crust near the wall. The dog darts forward, takes it, and returns with silent gratitude, though you suspect gratitude is less important to it than gravy. Some swear that feeding a stray dog outside a kitchen keeps thieves from the door. Others say it merely creates a better fed dog. Even now it is hard to tell which belief the maid holds, but the dog approves of both. You move on before someone asks why you're admiring another man's supper with such spiritual intensity. The glow of the rich kitchen fades behind you, but not the smell. It follows like a song. Soon, however, the lane narrows, the houses sag closer, and the warmth thins into another kind of evening. Here poor doorways open onto rooms where smoke creeps low and rushes rot underfoot. A woman crouches by a small hearth stirring a pot that smells mostly of cabbage oats and endurance. Two men share a trencher so hard at the edge that one taps it against the table before soaking it in broth. A child-sized bundle sleeps near the wall, though you do not look long enough to learn more. This tale is meant to rest gently, and London has sorrows enough without naming each one. An old man sits beside a shutter with his hands wrapped around a cup, letting the steam touch his face, as if warmth alone were supper. At one threshold, a peddler offers little packets of dried peas, garlic and mustard seed. He claims mustard warms, the blood strengthens, the belly clears, the head wakes the limbs and discourages worms. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether mustard truly performs all these duties, but it certainly announces itself with confidence. A woman buys a pinch and tucks it into her sleeve as carefully as a jewel. You pass a bakehouse where the public oven has gone dark for the night, though heat still lingers in the brick. In many places, people bring their dough to a common oven, paying the baker for the use of his fire. A mark pressed into each loaf helps families know their own bread again, at least in theory. The baker's boy sweeps ashes with a birch broom and the air smells of crust smoke and flour. Near the door, a basket holds loaves that have cracked, burned, or failed to please. They are not wasted. Very little is wasted here unless waste belongs to the wealthy, and even then someone waits nearby with quick hands and a cloth sack. A thin woman asks for yesterday's bread. The baker names a price. She names a smaller one. They argue softly because hunger has no strength to shout forever. At last he gives her 2 dark loaves and waves her off as if annoyed by his own mercy. She tucks them under her cloak and disappears into the mist. Your own bread bundle presses against your ribs, suddenly heavier with meaning. Farther along you catch another glimpse of abundance behind shutter. Cracks a hall, where candles burn bright, where rushes look freshly scattered, where a table is laid with pewter cups, knives, trenchers, and cloth. Laughter rises rich and loose. A servant carries out a bowl of scraps and tosses them into a covered bin for pigs or dogs, or the poor, depending on custom kindness and supervision. The smell of wine and roasted meat rolls into the street, meets the gutter stink, and becomes London's honest perfume. You keep walking slower now. Feast smoke and hunger share the same air. One man complains that the sauce lacks saffron. Another woman waters pottage so it will stretch until morning. In one house, beeswax candles burn steady and clean. In another, a rushlight sputters, giving more smoke than light. In one cellar, winter apples lie cushioned in straw. In another, a family listens to the last spoons scrape the pot. The dog noses your hand, still scented faintly of rue rosemary and gravy from the crust it stole from Fortune. You break off a small piece of your coarse bread and give it over. It eats, then licks rain from its muzzle. A bell sounds beyond the roofs, softer now, calling the city toward night. You remember Ludgate's candle, the church flames the alehouse hearth, the physician's green lantern, the gatehouse tallow stump. London is made of lights that do not shine equally. Some burn behind stained glass, some burn above silver cups, some tremble beside sick beds, shop counters, broken wheels and empty bowls. You pass on through the mist with the smell of rich kitchens fading behind you and poor hearth smoke rising ahead. The city does not explain itself. It only warms some hands and chills others, fills some trenches and thins some pots, stores winter safely behind oak doors while hunger waits under dripping eaves. You pull your cloak close, listen to the bell's last note and walk carefully toward the deeper dark. You move into the deeper dark as the last smell of rich kitchen smoke thins behind you, and London begins to close itself of the night, not quietly, never quietly, but with bolts, shutters, mutters, bells, and the weary scrape of wood against wood. The lanes narrow again. The upper stories lean above you like tired heads. Rainwater drips from eaves in slow cold beads. Somewhere a door slams, then a bar drops into place with a heavy oak sound that says the household has decided the world can remain outside until morning. The curfew bell sounds beyond the roofs, low and grave, rolling through the city like a warning wrapped in prayer. You pause beneath a crooked signboard painted with a candle and listen as another bell answers from farther away. Some say the ringing tells honest folk to cover their fires, shut their doors and settle under wool blankets before night teaches harsher lessons. Others swear the bell also troubles wandering spirits, thieves, fever demons and men who have had too much ale. No one can quite agree whether it frightens evil or merely reminds evil to lower its voice. A watchman appears at the corner torch held high cloak dark with rain. The flame bends and flutters, showing a narrow face, a short beard and a staff banded with iron. Behind him walks another older and broader, carrying a lantern with horn panes that glow like dull amber. They move slowly, not because they are lazy, but because night in London must be inspected in pieces, doorways, alleys, carts, stair mouths, cellar hatches, corners where shadows collect as if they pay rent. "Keep your way," the first watchman says when he sees you. You nod. This seems safer than explaining that your way has been uncertain since Ludgate. The dog stands beside you with unusual politeness. Perhaps it respects torches. Perhaps it has previous legal difficulties with watchmen. Even now it is hard to tell. The watchman lowers his torch slightly, studying your face, your bundle, the damp cloak, the sprig of rue and rosemary tied to your belt. Lodging. Soon you say, because hope is sometimes shorter than truth. He grunts and points his staff down the lane. Find it before the next round. Then he moves on, calling the hour in a voice that scrapes along the walls. The words stretch into the mist, warning sleepers to guard their fires, and rogues to remember that someone is pretending to look for them. His companion taps shutters with the butt of his staff when light leaks too brightly through cracks. Fire is feared here with a seriousness that makes sense among timber houses packed tight as kindling. A careless ember can leap from hearth to rushes, from rushes to wall hangings, from wall hangings to roof beams, and then London becomes one great expensive candle. You continue where he pointed. Shops have shut their wooden fronts folded down and barred their painted signs swinging gently overhead. A bootmaker's sign creaks. A fish painted on a board glimmers in torchlight, looking fresher than anything sold beneath it. A cutler's door is marked by crossed knives, and someone has chalked a small cross beside the latch, just as you saw earlier near the sick house. Some swear chalk crosses keep sickness from entering, while others say they keep neighbours from asking questions. Both functions seem useful after dark. Near a shuttered bakery, the smell of warm ash still breathes from the walls. The public oven sleeps, but not fully. Heat lingers in the brick like a memory of bread. A cat slips along the sill above it, pauses to stare at you with the severe expression of a bishop denied fish, then vanishes into a gap between houses. The dog watches the cat go and chooses peace, which may be the finest miracle you've seen all day. The lane opens into a small crossing where a torch burns in an iron bracket fixed to a stone wall. Beneath it stands a roadside shrine, little more than a niche holding a painted virgin, with a blue cloak darkened by smoke. Someone has placed a rushlight at her feet. Someone else has left a crust, a bent pin, and a thread of red wool. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether offerings left at night are braver or more desperate than those left by day. You stand there a moment, letting the torchlight warm one side of your face while the other remains cold. From somewhere nearby comes a whisper, then a soft laugh, then silence. You turn your head. Nothing moves but rainwater. Then two figures slip across the far end of the lane, cloaks drawn close, heads bent together. They are gone before the torch can shape them clearly. Lovers, thieves, servants carrying messages, men with business they would rather not name London, offers many explanations, and recommends you choose none too loudly. You think again of the monk's pale face by the river, the wrapped packet in his hand, the wherry fading into fog. Perhaps he is asleep now behind monastery walls. Perhaps he sits in some candle-lit room untying knots. Perhaps the packet is a relic, a letter, a pardon, a piece of bone, or only cheese, as the sailor claimed in the alehouse. No one can quite agree because no one who knows is speaking to you. A gust moves down the lane and pushes smoke beneath your hood. You cough softly, your eyes water. Above in a high room, someone sings a short lullaby thin through the shutters. In another house, a man coughs long and hard, then spits into rushes. Somewhere a woman scolds a child-sized shadow or a husband-shaped one. The tone is difficult to distinguish. A baby cries, is hushed, cries again, then quiets. The sleeping city is not asleep. It breathes in rooms behind doors, beside banked fires, under wool blankets alive with warmth and perhaps fleas. You pass a heap of old rushes swept from a hall and piled near the gutter for collection or neglect. They smell of smoke, spilled ale herbs, damp boots, and days of human life pressed flat. Fresh rushes are strewn inside better houses, sometimes mixed with lavender meadow, sweet, or wormwood. Old rushes left too long become less floor covering than small civilization. Some swear wormwood keeps fleas away. Others say fleas respect no plant, no king, and very few saints. The dog sneezes as if confirming this doctrine. Another pair of watchmen comes from the opposite lane. Their lantern shines over your shoes, your cloak, your face. One carries a billhook, the blade dark and hooked at the end of a pole. The other has a wooden rattle at his belt, used to call help if trouble grows teeth. He eyes the dog first, then you. Late, he says. You agree. The whole city seems built on that word now. You ask where a traveller might find a place to sleep without being robbed, rained on, or converted into a cautionary tale. The older watchman points toward a hall near a yard where carriers sometimes sleep for a coin or a favour. Not Fine, he says. Fine has not asked for me, you answer. He almost smiles, then thinks better of it and moves on. You follow his direction under the wavering torchlight. The lanes are quieter now, though not gentler. Shuttered shops hunch in darkness. Water runs along the gutters. Somewhere behind you, the watchman calls the hour again, and his voice fades beneath the roofs. The dog pads beside you, no longer just a follower, but a small warm certainty in a city of half-seen things. Ahead, a low doorway glows faintly beneath an overhang, and beyond it you hear the murmur of people settling for the night. Coughs, whispers the rustle of straw, the dull movement of tired bodies making peace with a hard floor. You step toward it through torch smoke and rain mist, carrying the day's smells in your cloak river ale. Herbs, market, fish, wet wool, rich kitchens, poor hearths, and the curfew bell's last note seems to follow you into the dark. You duck beneath the low doorway the watchman showed you, and the night's rain falls away behind your shoulders like a curtain drawn across a stage that has seen too much mud. Inside the hall is long, narrow and dim, lit by a few tallow candles set in iron prickets and one hearth at the far end where the fire has sunk into red, watchful embers. The air is warmer than the street, though only in the way a wool blanket is warmer than a snowbank after it's been used by several strangers. A woman near the entrance looks up from a stool, her grey hair hidden beneath a linen coif, her hands busy with a bundle of keys and a strip of notched wood. She's not the mistress of a great inn, not exactly, but she has the authority of anyone who controls dry floor space after curfew. You offer a coin. She studies it, studies the dog, and then lifts one eyebrow. Dog pays. The dog sits, which is an answer but not a payment. You offer the remaining heel of coarse bread. She takes it, breaks off. A piece tosses it to the dog and pockets the rest as if this is an old legal custom no court would dare challenge. No one can quite agree whether London hospitality is kindness dressed as trade or trade dressed as kindness, but either way you are allowed inside. The hall floor is strewn with rushes, some fresh, most not. They lie thickest along the walls, mixed with bits of lavender wormwood and crushed sweet flag meant to sweeten the air, discourage fleas, and persuade damp stone to behave like a meadow. The attempt is noble. The result is complicated. Under the herbal smell linger smoke-old ale, wet shoes, body's wool onions, and the sour ghost of many suppers. Travellers have already settled wherever the floor benches and shadows allow. A carter lies near the wall with his cloak over his face. Two pilgrims sit shoulder to shoulder beneath a hanging shield that may once have belonged to the household, or may simply be decorative intimidation. A peddler hugs his pack to his chest while he sleeps, arms crossed over ribbons, needles, combs, bone buttons, and whatever dreams merchants have when they fear theft more than nightmares. Near the hearth, a serving boy sprinkles fresh rushes over a damp patch with the solemnity of a priest disguising a battlefield. You choose a place not too close to the door because draughts creep there, and not too close to the hearth because sparks travel with ambition. This leaves a narrow strip beside a wooden post where someone has scratched little marks into the grain, crosses initials, a crude bird. You lower yourself carefully, feeling every mile of the day gather in your knees. The dog circles twice as if measuring the legal boundaries of your lodging, then drops beside your feet with a sigh that sounds older than the city. A wool blanket is handed to you. It is brown, heavy damp at one corner, and full of other people's history. You wrap it around your shoulders anyway, because medieval dignity is mostly the art of accepting the least bad option without weeping into it. The wool scratches your neck. Your boots remain on. Everyone's boots remain on. A person who removes boots in a crowded London hall either trusts mankind too much or has already lost the boots. Above you the rafters disappear into soot. Smoke from the hearth moves slowly under them, searching for a way out and finding only compromise. Your eyes sting again. In the wavering candlelight, shadows stretch up the walls and make ordinary things strange. A hanging ladle becomes a hook-handed saint. A stack of stools becomes a crouching beast. A cloak on a peg becomes someone standing too still. Some swear that before sleep, when the body loosens and the soul grows light, shadows show truths hidden from daylight. Others say tallow candles simply make poor artists of everything. A man nearby rolls onto his side and coughs into his sleeve. Another mutters a prayer in his sleep. A woman whispers to her companion about tying a strip of red thread around the bedpost to keep night terrors away. Though there is no bedpost here, only the wooden post beside you and a great many strangers. Even now it's hard to tell whether charms protect sleepers from spirits or give anxious hands something useful to do before darkness settles. You take the folded sprig of rue and rosemary from your belt and tuck it near your bundle. The physician's bitter draught still haunts your tongue, and your stomach feels calmer, though perhaps it has simply grown too tired to argue. The little iron charm rests in your palm. You rub it once with your thumb, remembering the old woman at the roadside shrine, the toll collector's candle, the church relic. No one fully trusts the monk vanishing into river fog. London has placed so many protections in your path today that danger begins to feel like the city's true craft. The candles burn lower. One is snuffed by the grey-haired woman who pinches the wick with damp fingers and does not flinch. The hall sinks deeper into ember light. You hear the rain outside softening along the roof, dripping from eaves into barrels, sliding down walls, joining gutters, finding the Thames at last. Somewhere beyond the door the watchman's staff taps stone. Farther away perhaps a bell marks another hour, but it comes muffled now as if tucked under wool. Fleas find you with the quiet confidence of professionals. You shift. The blanket shifts. The dog opens one eye, decides this is not its problem, and closes it again. You scratch your wrist with dignity, then less dignity. Wormwood, it seems, has not negotiated successfully with all parties. Still you do not rise. The floor is hard but steady. The hall is crowded but enclosed. The fire is low but alive. In medieval London this counts as a soft landing. A pilgrim near the wall begins snoring in a pattern that resembles distant sawing. The peddler clutches his pack tighter. The serving boy curls near the hearth, with his arms tucked into his sleeves. The grey-haired keeper sits by the door a while longer, keys in her lap, listening to the hall the way a shepherd listens to sheep. When at last she leans back and closes her eyes, the whole room seems to breathe out. You lie there wrapped in damp wool and smoke boots, aching hands slowly warming beneath your cloak. The dog's back presses against your ankle, a small solid warmth. Above soot-black rafters hold the dark. Below rushes whisper whenever someone turns. London mutters beyond the walls, not asleep, never fully asleep, but farther away now. You let your eyes grow heavy. You do not dream yet. You only drift at the edge, held by ember, glow, old straw, wet wool, and the faint bell that still seems to be ringing somewhere inside your bones. You wake before you mean to, not because anyone calls you gently, but because medieval London has never learned the courtesy of silence. Somewhere in the hall a man coughs himself upright. Near the hearth, the serving boy stirs ashes with iron fire tongs, coaxing a thin red glow from beneath grey powder. The grey-haired keeper moves among the sleepers with her keys at her belt, tapping a bench here, nudging a boot there, reminding the room that paid darkness has ended. The dog is still against your ankle, warm and stubborn, as if it has guarded you from every danger except flea's damp wool and the entire 15th century. Pale dawn leaks through the shutters. It is not golden yet. It is the colour of cold milk, thin and uncertain, spreading slowly over rushes, blankets, bundles and faces creased by poor sleep. You sit up with a blanket around your shoulders and feel London return to you piece by piece. The ache in your back, smoke in your hair, the bitter ghost of the physician's draught, the smell of wet wool, old straw banked fire, and humanity packed too close for comfort. The hall begins to loosen. Pilgrims tighten straps. The peddler checks his pack with both hands, counting bone buttons, ribbons, needles, and combs, as if each has spent the night plotting escape. A carter pulls on gloves stiff with damp. Someone finds a missing shoe beneath the rushes and kisses it before pretending he did no such thing. Some swear that putting the left shoe on first invites ill luck before breakfast. Others say a man with only one shoe has larger concerns. No one can quite agree, but several people glance downward all the same. You fold the damp blanket and return it to the keeper, who accepts it without thanks, though not unkindly. Her face in dawn light looks older and softer than it did by tallow flame. She gives the dog half a crust from your own surrendered bread, which seems like a circular economy of suffering. The dog accepts it solemnly. Outside, London is quieter but not asleep. Dawn has opened the city like an eye not fully willing. The lane glistens after rain. Gutters run thinly toward the river. Shutters creak upward. A baker's boy sweeps ashes from the oven mouth. A woman shakes old rushes from a doorway into the street, releasing the smell of herb smoke and yesterday. Somewhere close, a church bell rings the first office, and its sound travels over the rooftops cleaner than anything beneath it. You walk toward the higher ground near the wall where the roofs can be seen through gaps between houses. They rise in uneven rows, thatched dark with rain-red tile where wealth has taken precautions, timber gables leaning into one another, chimneys breathing pale smoke into the morning. Beyond them, church towers stand like patient fingers. Farther still, the Thames lies under mist, carrying another day of boats, refuse prayer work and rumour. The city smells different at dawn. Less ale, more ash. Less roasted meat, more bread. Less shouting, more preparation. Porters' shoulder loads. Apprentices emerge yawning from shop doors, their caps askew, their master's commands already waiting. A woman draws water and drops a sprig of fennel into the bucket. A man chalks a fresh cross beside his threshold. Another ties red thread around a child's wrist before sending him out with a basket. Even now it is hard to tell whether these small protections keep danger away, or simply help people step into danger with steadier hands. You pass the market square again, not yet loud, only gathering breath. Boards are set on trestles, baskets arrive. The market cross stands damp and grey, the blue cloth still tied to the carved saint. Near the fish stalls, empty tubs wait. Near the baker loaves steam beneath cloth. The official with the fur-lined hood is nowhere to be seen, perhaps still sleeping, perhaps dreaming sternly of false measures. At the edge of the square you glimpse the ink-fingered monk once more. He stands beneath an eave, speaking to no one, now his pouch flat at his side. His face turns briefly toward the waking market. Perhaps the wrapped packet is gone. Perhaps it was delivered in the night. Perhaps it was never anything more than a letter, a relic, a scrap of law or cheese with an excellent sense of drama. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. He lowers his hood and disappears into a doorway before the city can explain him. You do not follow. You've survived one day in London, and this has made you wise in small practical ways. You turn instead toward the Gate Road. Ludgate's arch waits ahead, less terrible in morning light, but still stern enough to charge a cloud if it could. The toll collector's place is empty for a moment, the half-burned candle replaced by a fresh one not yet lit. A cart rolls past you toward the city, its wheel newly bound, perhaps the same broken one from last night, perhaps merely London repeating itself. The carter mutters to his oxen. The oxen ignore both him and history. The dog walks beside you until the road begins to open. At the threshold between city shadow and pale road it stops. You stop too. It looks back toward the streets, then up at you. For a foolish breath you think it may come with you. But the dog belongs to London, to kitchens, alleys, fallen crusts, warm hearths, and legal uncertainty. It wags once, turns, and trots back under the arch. You watch until it vanishes among boots and wheels. The morning air beyond the wall feels wider. Not clean exactly, but wider. Fields lie damp beyond the road. Smoke from the city drifts behind you. Bells continue to sound, softened by distance, folding the day open over London's roofs. You carry little more than you brought: an iron charm, a bitter memory of herbs, damp wool, fewer coins, and a knowledge that the city is not one danger, but 1,000 small ones, each ordinary enough to be missed until it touches you. And now the road grows quieter beneath your feet. The wall behind you becomes only a dark line through the mist. The bells become slower, gentler, as if they are no longer calling you to endure, but only reminding the morning to breathe. You feel the cold loosen from your hands. You let your shoulders fall. The dog is gone, the monk is gone, the market is waking without you, and the river moves on through fog and pale light. You keep walking, but softly now, as though the world itself has lowered its voice. The mud no longer seems eager to pull you down. The fields ahead shine with beads of rain. A crow lifts from a bare branch and crosses the whitening sky. Behind you, London smokes and murmurs, dangerous and alive, but it is already fading into the gentler shape of a story told beside a low fire. So you breathe in slow and deep. You let the last hard stones of the city pass out of your feet. You let the bells drift farther away. You let the worn cloak rest around you, heavy but warm enough, and imagine a small hearth somewhere ahead, a wooden bowl, a clean corner of straw, a door closed against the wind. Nothing chases you now except sleep, and sleep is kind tonight. The road softens, the mist softens, even the memory of London softens, until only candlelight remains low and steady, and the long medieval dark folds itself around you like wool.